Hi, welcome to my channel. I focus on Ascension science and the expansion of consciousness. And today I am super excited to share some information that I was able to channel, which was completely unexpected. But it's one of those rare cases where I found that what I'm bringing through matches what another channeler received about the same time. And I got this definitely before she posted it, which, and interestingly enough, I'm having a feeling that we both received the same content or tuned into the same content relatively at the same time. And she posted it later. I just happened to watch it and realized, holy cow, it's the same thing that I basically brought through. And it's exciting news for those on the Ascension journey. So to back up, let me explain to you a bit basically what I received and then what other additional content that I heard actually just yesterday while I was running that matched the same content that I had downloaded. So on May the 25th, I was doing a meditation, and I normally am able to basically during the meditation process, I tune into different beings, sometimes my own guides, sometimes my higher self, sometimes a collective consciousness. So if you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll kind of get a sense of the information that I'm able to bring through. And I'm asking questions to help my own understanding of the consciousness expansion process, but I also want to share that with you. So in this particular case, I was actually wanting to ask more of a personal question, and there's lots of things that I get that are more personal in nature that I don't necessarily share on this particular channel, but I was simply asking more about what I can do to clear the energy inside of my throat that in the physical world would be due to allergies. So, I've got allergies or some sort of like, I guess you could say a reaction that I'm having to something in the environment, and it causes a lot of postnasal drip, and, I cough a lot. And I was asking that question. And I was also doing this, basically trying to also tap into the Akashic record. So it wasn't necessarily asking guides, but it was tuning into the Akashic record. Now, when I received information, I wasn't necessarily writing it down, but it was pretty interesting. And I ended up talking to my daughters about it like that day because I found it pretty fascinating. So simply by asking, what can I do to reduce my allergies? What I got back was that the ley lines of the earth needed to be cleared. Now I'm expecting, gee, this is why you have allergies. And I'm getting back the ley lines of the earth needed to be cleared. That was a lot broader than I was expecting. And then specifically, I was told that specifically the rose line needed to be cleared and would be cleared. So the situation would alleviate soon. Now, the rose line, and the only reference that I had to that was that it's an energy line that essentially I associated or knew about from one of the Dan Brown movies. I want to say it's the first in the series. I think it's Da Vinci Code, but I could be wrong. But it's basically the first in a series of movies in which a symbologist is basically used in order to kind of solve crimes, if you will. And so they bring up the concept of the rose line. That was the first time I had ever heard about it in my life. But it's basically a line that runs through France, and that's really where they kind of share it. But in the information that I got specifically, the Akashic and the guides were basically saying the rose line needed to be cleared specifically in the UK. So I was shown a visual very specifically of the energy clearing going through the UK. And maybe some of you viewers might know more about the rose line than I do. I actually didn't even research much about it after I had that session. And actually just went off to tell my daughters about it. And they were like, no, the rose line's only in France. And I'm like, no, I think it goes to the UK. Not that I can prove it, but, I'm going to trust the information that I've gotten. So, so then they basically said that the energy clearing needs to occur and will occur. And it's not going to just help me, but it's going to help a lot of people across the earth. So that was another key message that I got. And, you know, obviously in that moment, I'm like, okay, there's not much I can do about that. but obviously work on trying to create that intention of, you know, clearing of the landlines as one human participant to have an impact on Earth. There are many energy and grid healers out there. So in other words, you know, they're implying that, you know, can be a part of an energy or grid healing process with other humans. And by doing so, you will continue to work on healing the ley lines or the grids that run through the earth. At the same time, after I think I got that message, then I did start writing some stuff down. And I heard basically that the midnight oil comes alive through the crystalline grid. High hope is centered on this event. So the midnight oil comes alive through the crystalline grid, which would be like crystal structures underneath the earth. High hope is centered on this event. And I had to ask, what is the midnight oil? Because I had no idea what that was. And the answer that I got was the Rasha body. Now that's also, I have to, you know, I assumed in that moment that also meant Rasha body. And then I heard the waveform coexists together. And the Rasha body, because I asked, well, what is the Rasha body? The Rasha body, which is a pre-matter template. And so I have often, and the way that I learned about this is through Ascended Master Hilarion, that essentially we've got what I had heard as an etheric template or blueprint that basically becomes almost a template from which matter or particles, atoms, basically is formed. So it's almost a body into itself, but it's in a blueprint etheric template format. And that, you know, there's changes to that before it ever takes place in the physical form. So basically they said, you know, the Rasha body is the pre-matter template. So to me that said, that's the same thing as the etheric blueprint that I was taught. And they were implying that, okay, so this etheric template, which is a dark matter template, so that's probably why they call it the midnight oil, dark matter template, comes alive through the crystalline grid, which means that the blueprint template is coming alive in the crystalline grid of the earth, and high hopes is centered on this event. Waveform coexists together. So basically, depending upon the observer, you can have basically particles moving in waves or being stand still. But the way that I interpret this as I was hearing it is that essentially you've got like physical and etheric blueprint forms coexisting and overlapping in the same space, basically. The last thing that they said was white rose dragon sits on the throne. She is the apex. So white rose dragon sits on the throne. She is the apex. I had no idea what that meant at the time. It was pretty cryptic. But what was interesting is that was the second time that night that I heard the word rose, as in the first time was the ley lines, specifically the rose line in the UK, needs to be cleared and will be cleared. And that's going to help alleviate the energy blockages that you have, which creates allergies. And that basically a white rose dragon is sitting on is now sits on the throne. So it was implied as in it's a new event, you know. So this white rose dragon sitting on the throne is a new event, and she is the apex. In other words, she's probably it's a she, which is interesting, but she essentially is, she's like not in the sense of the leader, but she's like mother. She's like the apex of all of this that we experience. That's kind of what I was, I guess you could say, feeling that was meant by the statement in the moment. So again, this pre-matter, dark matter, pre-matter template, the midnight oil comes alive through the crystalline grid. And this is happening because the white rose dragon sits on the throne, which is the new event, which is causing this to happen. She's the apex, and there's high hopes that are centered on this event. Okay, so that was basically a message that I got on 525. I probably would never have shared it on this forum because it was so random, and there's lots of things like this that I get that I actually don't share on this particular site because it's either something directly for me or it's like a little tidbit of information, and it doesn't make sense until 2 years later when something else happens that actually, you know, that I realized that I actually got a preview, you know, insight to that event, but I had no idea what it meant at the time that I was channeling it. Well, I was very fortunate that, as I mentioned, every so often I listen to another channeler, and she actually posted a video a couple days after I channeled this on the 25th, which means that she was probably receiving the same information about the same time, which means we were either tuning into the same information or we were connected to the same source or the same frequency in some way. But it wasn't the exact same message. But what she did imply is that there is a dragon energy. So it's a certain frequency of energy. It's like an aurora energy that is essentially, you know, think about like the aurora borealis. Okay, so an aurora frequency energy that is essentially influencing a change specifically on the rose line. And the white dragon is going to be passing over certain energy to the female dragon on the rose line, specifically on the 21st of June. So I'm not even going to attempt to try and basically explain what gets discussed in her channeling. But what I am going to do, and her name is Magenta Pixie, I am going to include a link to that video so you can definitely listen to it for yourself. But this particular dragon energy is basically, it's like a monadic consciousness structure. And so essentially this particular structure is basically starting to, the frequency of this monadic structure is starting to penetrate into the earth, and really having, you know, an impact of sort of lifting the veils, if you will, expanding, you know, enabling expanded consciousness on the earth. So this particular frequency of energy, think about the increase in the gamma rays that are coming through due to more solar activity. All of this, the aurora borealis, is essentially able to help clear a lot of stagnant energy that exists within the earth and help turn on and activate the crystalline grid inside of the earth, which I think is very positive. And as was stated through this channeling, it's, you know, high hopes is centered on this particular event. So I can only imply or, connect the dots that this event is the fact that this energy is coming in. It's going to have a material impact on some energies, some stagnant energies, specifically that are running through the ley line in the UK. And by doing so, you know, it's going to have a positive impact on a lot of people on the earth, including helping to clear my allergies, which would be really good. So I guess we'll see. Time will tell. but yeah. So I just wanted to share that. I think that's positive because it sounds like it's not only did I get the sense that this is a pretty significant event for our experience here on Earth as humans, but that was also reiterated through Magenta Pixie with what she channeled. Like, this is a pretty significant event, and it's a major clearing. So anyway, I thought this was positive news. And there's a few times where I can honestly say that, you know, I'm bringing stuff through and it matches what happens to be coming through from other channelers about the same time. And, you know, it's probably happened to me 3 or 4 times, but this is one of the times. So it seems, as I mentioned, that we're somehow connected in or receiving energy from the same consciousness group, if you will, which is interesting. The way that we interpret it is slightly different, obviously, but it's very similar in the message. So I'm excited to share it because I think it's very positive news for all of us. So if you have any questions, or hey, you even know more about the rose line, that I'm kind of interested in doing more research on the rose line and getting that whole history, but would love to know about it in the comments. And with that, I certainly hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful week, wonderful weekend, wherever you are, whenever you're listening to this, and continuously wish you well on your journey. Thanks very much. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Good night.